Welcome to the One and O podcast. I'm your host, Dominic Skeen. And today I've got a guest who I've known about for quite a while. She did quite a few recaps in spring training. She has also been involved in summer ball teams, a whole lot of baseball throughout Washington State. So it is my pleasure to welcome onto the channel Emily Klesick of Up West Sports. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. I know, we've been talking about baseball of all levels, which is part of why our conversation has been a lot more fruitful than just, oh, the Mariners. Can you believe the Mariners? So we're going to get into that stuff today. But first, obviously, we've got to get into um, the Mariners themselves. You've only got 42 games left. You're basically at the three-quarter mark of the season at this point. And starting out, right, it just kind of got real last night. I started looking at these playoff odds, really the last couple of weeks, like daily to see, okay, each game it's going to change. How much is it going to change? And now the Mariners sit at, as of this morning, 34.1% chance to make the playoffs. Last night when I was looking at this on stream, that's like 8 hours ago, 9 hours ago, it was a 28% chance. So well under half. It's like a third or less that the Mariners make the playoffs. I just haven't really faced this reality yet in 2026. So being, a big believer, right? Somebody who likes to push that kind of mindset. Yeah, it's kind of a shock to me. I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I was texting a friend of mine last night and saying I finally was brave enough to actually look at the standings. I hadn't looked at them in the last couple of days just because it felt so depressing to even think about the reality that we may not make it where we went last year, and to actually go in and look at the standings and see just how bleak everything actually looks. 4.5 games back in the West. We're 4 games out of the wild card. It's bleak, if we're being honest. And it's just hard to believe that the team that went all the way to Game 7 of the ALCS last year is in this position where they are this many games under 500, and your stars are not playing well, and nobody's picking up the slack. And yeah, it's pretty devastating for Mariners fans to watch. And I don't blame people who feel really defeated about it. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And you and I haven't been the most defeatist fans. We've been looking for kind of the silver linings, the needle in the haystack, things that we can cling on to, as many people have, right? I mean, you watched the post game last night. Brad Adam just looks absolutely, he's just trying to find something, just like the Mariners offense. He's pressing now. It kind of, travels throughout. They say hitting is contagious. So is not hitting, and it's spreading to Brad Adam. And then Dave Valley is, having to go and pick out Brian Wu and, say, oh, this was a great outing because 15 out of 18 first pitch strikes, which it was 15 out of 19, but it's like that, like a first pitch strikes for a starting pitcher is now what we're clinging to, not a quality start. I'm not somebody who's, going to say that, oh, Brian Wu didn't do these things well, because I can look at, this stuff and say, okay, Brian Wu, 5 scoreless innings, there's something there to be proud of. And I can go look at the StatCast, which I do every single night. But when you watch the actual product on the field, for me, the biggest problem right now is like, if the team was poor, we're 8 games under 500, but the team was just absolutely scrapping every night, just at bat after at bat, just being a hard team to play. If it was like the Rays, if it was like the Tigers, if it was like, the Guardians, any of the teams that take longer at bats, I think I would be okay with it. Genuinely. I think it's more about the actual product. Like the film doesn't lie, the numbers can tell a story, but the film really, really doesn't lie. So that for me is where, like, I just want to see the team look better. And knowing you, right, you've, you watch a lot of baseball, being a mom, you've coached, you basically, worked with teams. I'm sure, you've, had experience like coaching and stuff like that. So, just the eye test, I want to get your take on that. It's been pretty rough for me and many others, and I know you've watched a lot of baseball, so want to see what you're getting out of it.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. The eye test does not lie right now, and what we're seeing right now from the Mariners is it's this weird like dichotomy of you're seeing them pressing. They're swinging at pitches so far outside the zone. They're they're just not using the plate discipline that really got them where they need to go. Sure, last year their chase rate was high too, and strikeout rate was high, but in that strikeout rate, they were still swinging within the zone, and that's how they were getting as many home runs. And I think that's part of the issue, is that they're swinging at pitches so far outside the zone that they can't. They're either not making good contact or not making quality contact. I feel like a really good example of that right now is Josh Naylor. He's really picked it up in the last while. Of course, now he's hurt and he's been out for a couple of games, but he, coming into the massive game on Saturday when they had the celebration and he hit 2 home runs, he was getting over or under everything, popping everything up, hitting everything into the ground, not creating quality contact at all. And most of that was coming on pitches that were not inside the zone. And so I feel like that's the biggest thing that we're seeing, like just from the eye test with these players right now, is that their plate discipline is really struggling. And when you can't assess the zone properly, you're not going to make quality contact. And that's where you're going to see these 3-pitch strikeouts, right? Or even players that now, they're taking pitches right down the middle in the zone because they're not familiar with what the zone looks like, and they're not familiar with, and part of me wonders if some of that has to do with the ABS system and getting used to analyzing the zone differently than you had to do before you were partially in charge of what your at bat looks like with the strike zone. But ultimately it takes discipline, and other teams are succeeding with it. So you got to figure out how to adapt and do it well yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned Josh Naylor, and that is one of the hitters that I would say the most. It's hard to rank them on a scale of like who has a clear approach to who doesn't. But Josh Naylor is one of the guys where even when he's good, it's like he's getting his pitch and not missing, like second, third pitch swinging all the time. And so when it looks bad, it looks really bad.
Yeah.
When it looks good, it looks really good. It just hasn't really had many spurts, or it's been maybe 1 or 2 weeks here or there where you can say, oh, he really looks locked in. And unfortunately, this weekend was probably one of those biggest times. The double dong on Saturday, 2 homers after not hitting one for 50 days, a couple more base hits, but really a lot of early count swings, like you said. And when you do things in relation to the zone, that's really what the thing is, because it's not just can you swing in a vacuum, can you swing, can you approach, I talk about 1-0 every pitch too. And some people ask, well, isn't that not what you want? Don't you want to go, if you're attacking the hitter, don't you want to go like 0-1, right? And I say, well, it's actually not about the balls and strikes as much as it is the wins and the losses, right? It's, let me make this a, something where I can say I won more than I lost. I can move on to the next one and at least get something out of this. And they're just not getting something, that they're not saying like, there's like that Denzel Washington quote where he's like, well, I'm leaving here with something. And the Bears offense needs to have innings where it's like, I'm leaving here with something. I've got runners on first and second, bags packed, right? We're not leaving. Like, we're going to cause a whole commotion if you don't, if we don't score a run. We're going to get 20 more pitches off your starter or something. And I will go back to the Believe teams, which one of my favorite kind of vibes around the team ever. This one, it's definitely been challenged in 2026. So that team in 2021, I look back and I see, thousands of Believe signs up, and the team reflected that in their at bats. It was literally just, oh, well, we have this plate approach where we're going to be really, really hard to play against. And, we're going to hold up these signs and everybody believes. It would be awesome if there were a way to capture that. Obviously that team was like overperforming. This team doesn't have any room to overperform. But where do you see, us both being believers as well? I end every single video with all glory to God. You also, being an outspoken believer. What can we do to kind of push that belief back into the narrative and into the fan base? Because it definitely feels like, that feels like so long ago.
Yeah. And, reflecting just even back to last year, when kind of one of the turning points for the team was when Ichiro gave his post Hall of Fame, like we're having his number retired and all that whole speech. And that was where the seize the moment tagline came from. To think about that, the reality is that on paper, like the famous quote of like, from that soccer coach of like, we had them on paper, but unfortunately the game's played on grass. Like that's reality, right? But on paper, we have arguably one of the most talented teams in the American League, without a doubt. Just from top to bottom, when all of our players are performing to their best, I really do believe that there's not a single team in this entire Major League Baseball that we cannot beat handedly if we're playing well. But, when the wheels fall off the bus, for lack of a better term, it doesn't just happen because one little thing happens. It's one little thing and then another little thing and another little thing, which means that it also can be put back together. And I really do think, the biggest win streak we've seen this year for the team is 8 wins back in May. I think it was May, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And this team hasn't been able to string anything together, but like, they can. And we know they can. We see this team and we know that they can go on a run, and all it would take is for somebody to get it started, whether that's Cal comes out and hits home runs 3 games in a row and everybody starts getting fired up. Maybe Julio comes out and hits home runs a few games in a row or whatever. They have to, but I think ultimately the biggest thing right now is this team doesn't believe in themselves. And if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't have a core understanding, and I don't mean that in like the kind of the pithy, like, oh, believe in yourself, but like to have a core, like deep in your gut feeling of like grit, of like, I can do the thing and I can be scrappy and I can work hard and I can put the effort in to be the best version of myself for my team and for my community or whatever it would be. I think our team's really lacking that right now. They're operating with a lot of self-doubt. They're operating with a lot of probably not meeting their own expectations after what last season looked like. And I think it's time to accept it's not going to look like last season. Cal's not having a MVP candidate season. Julio's not having an MVP candidate season. Brian Wu's not having a Cy Young contender season. So what are we going to do to put ourselves back in the race with what we have right now? Because you said we have 42 games left in the season, 40 games left in the season. So now what do you do with that? Are we rolling over dead, or are we going to get up and put together what we have with our team to make a run for it? Because again, we are being gifted the worst American League that I've seen in a very, very long time. And we have the team to take advantage of it, but they're going to have to let go of what they thought the season was going to look like. And the fans are going to have to let go of what they thought the season was going to look like and get behind their team, whatever it ends up looking like. Because if you make it to the playoffs, it doesn't matter how you got there. It can look ugly or it can look pretty. But once you get there, the record starts over again at 0. And you have to be ready to go in and fight like a dog to win the games that you're in there, because your record, other than the fact that, of course, like the first round bye and all that stuff, like, yes, that matters. But ultimately, once you get in the postseason, your record's set back at 0-0. So get in there and fight. It doesn't really matter how you get there.
I think you just nailed it, because I've been talking about this belief for weeks. And when I talk about, okay, yeah, like, believe, and everybody hold up the believe, right? There is a real important piece to this that I kind of was hoping that, you would have, some advice for us. And it really is like, there's the pithy belief in yourself that you talk about, or, oh, like you just say it, right? Oh yeah, let's just say it. Come on. And then there's having something that's unmovable in your core. And I think that actually basically summarizes the entire clubhouse from the outside perspective. Is it's like, you see Dan Wilson in the press conference, right? And he does, to an extent, have this unshakable core where, yeah, tough one tonight, everybody, and, Mariners Twitter gets really upset, and fans get really, they feel like this manager's not commiserating with me. He doesn't care, and that's not fair. Whereas really, and what it seems from the outside, like, okay, not assuming the worst for Dan Wilson, it would be, okay, like, this guy's got like, he knows that whatever he says in this press conference is not going to change the team. He's not going to go, slam his fist on the table and get angry. But at the same time, you think about it, and then when you get to 8 games under 500, it's like, well, nobody wants to be in this position. And it's not just going to keep going forever. If there is something this team needs that somehow, Dan Wilson wasn't the one to provide, the Mariners couldn't have foreseen that when they appointed Dan Wilson the last time. They couldn't, have foreseen that when they were 1 win away from the World Series last year. But now, you basically just have to make a decision based on where you're at. There still is like that 34% chance you make the playoffs that we go back to right here. And I thought it was pretty crazy that 4.5% chance to make to win the World Series is like, that feels really high.
I mean, it's the highest on the when you look at them there. That's the highest out of the American League West. But yeah,
Yeah.
but I think part of that is like, I mean, again, these like on paper we have one of the most talented teams in the American League, right? And you can't deny that. I didn't mean to cut you off if you had something else you were
Oh,
going to
no.
say. But to like, I really love Dan Wilson. I think he's an incredible man. I've seen what he can bring out of our team. I do also understand why people are so frustrated, and I think that part of the issue feels less like it's not so much that he's not like commiserating, but I think people want to see him take accountability, because there's definitely situations where, I mean, even last night going to Michael Rucker down 1-0, right? Like that's, and having him blow the lead again. Like I get where people are frustrated, but again, we're not going to make this team better as fans. We're not going to encourage this team further if we're just complaining and yelling and raging in the Twitter vacuum about what our manager should do differently or what our players should do differently. They have to kind of, because they're in a league of their own, like they have to kind of muster that up within themselves, or by the grace of God have this really just this huge turnaround. But that's not going to, I mean, okay, I want to be really careful, because I feel like I'm kind of creating this like parasocial relationship between us and the players, but at the same time, like we're not privy to their internal lives. We don't have access to them individually. So rather than living in this defeatist mindset, one, as believers, we can pray for them. And two, if we're complaining and miserable about it, we're going to miss what could happen. And it's going to take all of the joy out of, I mean, we're kind of letting the Mariners steal our joy right now anyway. I will admit that. I've totally let that happen, but we're going to end up missing out on what could happen here in this last run. And if it doesn't, fine. It's one baseball season. We've had a lot of losing seasons and a lot of seasons where we haven't made it to the playoffs. That's part of being a Mariners fan. But should they turn it around and take advantage of the American League West, like I know they can, like I don't want to miss it because I'm miserable and cranky about it. I want to be present for it and celebrate them and rejoice alongside them should they do the thing that we all know that they can do, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. Like you might as well be optimistic. And I really don't feel the same drain, I'd say, that certain other Mariners fans do. Like I do. I mean, I feel I definitely do feel every time the team loses. Right, last night I'm just trying to figure it out, pulling my hair out. But I also know that there is tomorrow. Like there is 42 games left, and I can't write those off as like, oh, this team isn't a playoff team, therefore I'm not going. I'm going to throw that 34% away, or I'm going to basically, I've already divested. I also don't think it's like a like a good prediction, or like, it's not like saying, oh, I think that Brian Wu is going to throw, more than, 30% sinkers tonight. He's going to, because it's not like that, right? It's like, I
Yeah.
think the Mariners aren't going to make the playoffs. It's like, great. I could think that too. But at that point, right, I can't start operating on that even if I wanted to right now. It's not like you can't make any moves. You can't change
Yeah.
this team up. If you get rid of Dan Wilson, you have to have a replacement ready, which would be Manny Acta, or, it would be, I mean, somebody who, probably has to come from the outside to bring in, this whole, kind of the vibe that you have. If you're firing Dan, you're saying that you needed something else. And, you wouldn't probably bring that in from his coaching staff. I mean, managerial candidates, I mean, there's definitely going to be a couple of those. There always is going to be.
Yeah.
I have mentioned, like in the past, Team Italy, right, versus Team USA in the World Baseball Classic had almost the same dichotomy, where it's like Team USA just lifeless, right, have all the talent, expected to do well, but they just can't do it. And then Team Italy was like the Texas Rangers, right? Uh,
That's
like,
a really, really good comparison.
analytics, tryhards, scrappy, aggressive bullpen decisions before the thing happens. Guys you don't know, filling in, right, stealing bases, really good infield defense, things like that.
Shooting shots espresso in the dugout.
Exactly, which is something that, I mean, being the Seattle Mariners, it's like, how do you not co-opt that? Like,
right?
and I mean, Dom Canzone, your move, but
yeah.
I look at the Texas Rangers doing stuff, basically like Team Italy. I look at the Mariners doing stuff basically like Team USA. You look at, I don't know about the Dodgers, but like the Red Sox, right? They have some of that Venezuela vibe, right? Of like, oh, we're just every home run, that Wilyer Abreu hits, we're going to go crazy.
Yep.
And the Mariners definitely, it's hard to say exactly what it is because, again, we don't know what these, actual people are dealing with, which is the good news, as well as it's, oh, well, we don't know, and that's bad news. It's like, that's the good news. The best thing we know is that there's a whole lot out there that we don't know.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
If there is a change, needed in the Mariners, and I will say, like, I'm not one of the people to call for Dan Wilson's job and say, oh, he needs to be fired today, or he needs to be, because I genuinely think it is still a more layered conversation than that. Because again, the other question is, who are you bringing in tomorrow? Who's managing the team?
With 40 plus games left, like what's your option that's better than where you're at?
And I do like that you said, it's the accountability, the communication, really, that could be worked on. I mean, I'm sure we've got some Seahawks fans watching this, and it's like Hard Knocks debuts, episode 2 last night. The Seahawks have this amazing communication, which they're able to illuminate in all the right ways, whereas the Mariners have this really rough kind of communication. And yeah, like, if there is something that's needed, I'm curious to see what they do. I genuinely am, because you basically have to go a completely different direction. And I do understand, right? If they say, okay, Dan Wilson is a guy who I think he probably steps down. Like, I don't know. What do you think? Like, I don't think that if he doesn't make the playoffs this year, that he wants to just continue, or, let the organization make their own decision.
Yeah, I entirely agree with that. And I think ultimately I was listening to another Mariners podcast, and it was actually Ty Dane Gonzalez was talking about how the because ultimately, I mean, I think we all probably know that Dan Wilson's not going to be the manager next year. However, that ends up playing out just because there have been across the board so many challenges this year with his management. And I'm not saying that in any sort of way of like, I respect him as a man so much. I really, really do. He's an incredibly kind man. I think on the whole, he is good at managing, like overseeing and managing a team, but it's some of those more like detail oriented decisions that he struggles with more. But I do think that with the way this has gone, and the fact that, I mean, the fan base has just like turned on him. I mean, I hope he goes somewhere wonderful and on a beach somewhere after the season's over and just moves. I hope he comes back into the organization in some way, shape, or form, but I think it'll look different coming next year. But Ty was talking about how, like, as a team, as the only team in the major leagues that has not made a World Series appearance, the Mariners need a manager that has been there. And they've either been in the World Series or they've won it, so that you have somebody who can say to their players, like, look them in the face. Like, I think about, like, obviously, well, maybe managers do this, but I'm thinking about, like, when I'm trying really hard to communicate something to my kids and I need them to hear me, like, especially when they're little, I put my hands on their face and I would say, listen to me. Like, I have been there and I know how to help you. That's what we need from a manager. We need a manager who can look at our players and be like, I have been there. I have been in that World Series dugout. I've played in those games and I know how to get you there. Let me help you. And I really think there's a lot of value to that. When you have a man, I mean, to Dan's credit, he has no managerial experience before he took over in 2024, right? This is not his, he didn't apply for this job. He didn't come from another team and get put here or, apply here and end up here. This was handed to him. And I mean, to his credit, I mean, look what he did last year. Like, certainly there were things where I feel like the talent on our team and having our catcher go for 60 home runs, like that overshadowed a lot of issues that kind of became more prevalent this year when that wasn't happening. But he did manage a team all the way to Game 7 of the ALCS. Like, he deserves his props for that. And so yeah, I really do think that he's probably not going to be managing the Mariners beyond the end of the season. I don't think he's going to end up being fired before the season's end, mostly because, like you said, what's the alternative? I mean, sure, like maybe it is Manny Acta. Maybe he would do a better job, right? Or maybe just the shakeup would change things up for the team. I do wonder if the communication issues that we've seen forward facing from the clubhouse from Dan are reflected in the clubhouse, like within it, and if there's some challenges there, and if that, especially when you look back to the piggyback pitching situation and how it really seemed like some of the pitchers didn't know when they were going to be starting and how that was going to work. Like, so I think there is something to be said of like for the people who are calling for Dan's job, like, is there, like, playing benefit of the doubt, is there a chance that you bring Manny in as your interim manager and he manages a little bit more aggressively or a little bit just with a different mindset and that changes things? I mean, sure, I think there's a good chance that happens, but at the same time, you don't know that. And I feel like it's kind of like 2024 when Scott Service was fired right around this time, a couple weeks from now. You're kind of like, okay, we know we're probably out of it, so let's try something. We're college boys throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks, right? And so I get it, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to happen. Like, I think he's likely with us till the end of the season, and then I think there'll be an open position for the 2027 season, whatever the 2027 season ends up looking like.
And that's a whole nother topic in and of itself, but
yeah.
With which could affect what the Mariners do. That could be affecting, and the Mariners could just be writing this out because of that. They could be sitting up there right now and saying, okay, we know that this is coming, so this is why we're planning everything the way we are, which that's obviously not what anyone wants to hear. I mean, the fans go, 1-0 every single night, put on that game, show their kids, show their, I mean, go, just expressing yourself as a Mariners fan. Like, we know that, people have worn Yankees and Dodgers hats forever, and they're going to continue to, because those teams are always in the playoffs, right? There's never going to be a time where the Yankees or Dodgers are feeling, sad as a brand. They just have so much more built on top of it. This is the stuff that we have to deal with as, the Seattle Mariners. And until we see a big shift in the fan base, like we think, last year, oh, we're close, right? Things are a lot different, for the next 5 years, we see like we're really one bad season away from, seeing a lot of those same problems come back. So it's like, like you say, right? I mean, that really resonates, the way that you, say that you have to have somebody who's been there before, who can say, look, you don't have to act like you've done this before. One of the biggest problems with analyzing baseball is people who are like, oh, well, that happened obviously because of that. And right, you see the thing and then you say, oh, well, that's why it's happening for sure. And then that connection, right, sometimes is where you lose things, where you're like, where it's like, actually, maybe we don't know as much as we think we do. Maybe there's still more for us to learn here, and they want us to think, oh, well, they're throwing, fastball right over the middle of the plate, first pitch, so we should swing at it.
Yeah.
Our main problem has been taking long at bats, and then the opposing pitchers are consistently the opposing teams are throwing 22 less pitches to us. We're hitting the ball, 2/3 of the we're hitting the ball hard only 2/3 of the time compared to the other team. The Mariners get so few opportunities just in terms of pitches to hit and pitches they actually make contact on. So Mariners don't see many pitches in the zone. That's kind of getting onto one of the more specific problems. Back to the zone, which it can feel a little bit like it can feel like we've already discussed this, but I promise we're coming at it from a different angle. So
I'm with you. You're good.
Yeah. So Brian Wu, and this is something that I consistently notice looking at these games, is that the Mariners pitchers will feel like, it feels like they're having to throw so many strikes, like they're really having to attack hitters, in the strike zone, throw a lot of strikes. So 63 is like a massively high strike rate.
Mhm.
Against the Mariners, I don't think anybody's had a 63% or 63% zone rate. Sorry, 63% of the pitches they're seeing are in the zone. And then they're swinging at 78% of them. That's also really high. So the Yankees are getting a lot of pitches in the zone, and they're swinging when
Yeah.
they get them. Brian Wu, he gets this really good strike rate, but it's like an outlier, which doesn't even give us the data that we're kind of hoping to see. And then he's not getting chased outside the zone, obviously, because he's throwing everything in the zone, which
Yeah.
the reason he has a 7 ERA on the road this year, 96.4, by the way, isn't like he gets hit really, really hard, and this start was
Yeah.
no different. So, despite the 15 out of 19 first pitch strikes, that we talked about, and getting ahead in the count early, that's a problem. And then in and of itself, right, it's like, okay, you could say, well, Brian Wu, man, he's so talented. He's so good at being so aggressive early in the count, and this is just where his results can end up sometimes. But the problem is the flow of the actual game when compared with the opponent. Because I go over to the opponent and it's consistent almost every single game. The opposing starting pitcher will go in the zone less than half the time. So Ryan Weathers only had to throw 44%,
Yeah.
pitches in the zone. So you're already starting to see, okay, the Mariners are seeing 44% of the pitches in the zone. Yankees seeing 63. They're already seeing 150% of the pitches in the zone. Mariners swing less when they do see the pitches in the zone. So there's so many,
Yeah.
so if you, and when you go to the the full season metrics for the whole league, Mariners are 28th in zone rate. They're one of
Wow.
the, yeah. So that's like the Rockies and the Braves. So the Braves scare teams out of the zone and get
Yeah.
walks. And
Yeah.
then the Rockies are just, they're the chaos ball team now.
Yeah.
Which I know your son is a Rockies fan. You watch some Rockies games.
We watch the Rockies a lot. They're a fun team to watch, but not because they're going to make it to the playoffs. They're just chaos. They are the chaos ball this year for sure.
And man, I just wish I could say those words about the Mariners. And I could say they're a fun team to watch, and they're the chaos ball team. Because even when we didn't make the playoffs, I knew that there was something there.
Yeah.
That was going to be built on the next year. All those fans holding belief signs, and come back they did. Then with Ryan Weathers, so anyway, throws the ball in the zone a lot less, tricks the Mariners into swinging a lot less, and then gets a extremely low strike rate. Yet, it's a 5 2/3 for Weathers with 1 run earned, 5 scoreless for Wu. It's basically even, whereas these plate discipline metrics, tell you that the Mariners just didn't get anything to hit. The Yankees get a ton of things to hit. Have you noticed anything kind of similar to that when watching some of these games? And I guess, comparing it to the Rockies, do you ever notice, like teams that are like the Rockies having the same problem? Because to me, this is a little bit of a symptom of having all these stars.
I couldn't agree more. And I think the difference between the Rockies and the Mariners, and I don't mean this to be unkind to the Rockies, because they are, I hope that if any Rockies players or Rockies fans hear me, know that I love you. But the Rockies really feel in a lot of ways, one, they play half their games at high altitude. The Rockies are fun to watch because their offense is unbelievable, right? Like there's a reason why they give their fans free tacos from Taco Bell if the Rockies score more than 7 runs. And it happens often because in their park, balls are going out all the time, right? Home runs happen so much more there, which is why pitchers don't want to go there. They don't want to play there, right? And that's their biggest issue is their pitching. They have a really hard time keeping runs off the board, but the offense is just abundant, right? Whereas with the Mariners, it really feels like we're in another year with 5 pitchers. I mean, obviously they've had their struggles, but on the whole, 5 pitchers who are living the Felix Hernandez experience, right? Of pitching either a quality start or a close to quality start, and then their bullpen gives up the game and their offense can't score. And so the difference I feel like there is it's not that we have excellent offense, but our pitching can't keep enough runs off the board for us to win. It's that our pitching is elite. I mean, we have one of the best starting rotations of all time, but our offense can't push runs across. And I think a lot of that goes back to those plate discipline metrics that you were just showing, right? pitchers know that the Mariners are going to swing at stuff outside the zone. And so they would rather risk giving up a walk, and the Mariners have drawn walks, their fair share of walks this year, but they would rather risk giving up a walk than throwing a ball in the zone because they know the Mariners more than likely are going to swing at something outside the zone. I mean, they're all doing it. Cal's doing it. Josh is doing it. Cole Young's doing it. Randy's doing it. They're swinging so much outside the zone. And if you don't, like I said earlier, if you don't have a good idea of the zone, you're not going to make quality contact. And then at the same time, as you were just showing with our pitchers and with Brian Wu, like so much more is inside the zone. So many more of their pitches are now inside the zone. And it feels like we've kind of had this regression to where everybody's feeling a little bit like 2023 George Kirby, where you're like, please just throw a ball outside the zone. Be willing to draw a walk. And he's actually doing better with that this year. And everybody else has kind of gone backwards. He's a lot more willing to give up a walk or two in a game to get players to chase, whereas other pitchers are not doing that. And so I think, I mean, the only word that I really feel like actually accurately describes the Mariners this year is discombobulated. Like across the board, nothing, no cylinder is firing at the same time as anybody else. And it's like, I said something back in like early April of like, it feels like playing a game of whack-a-mole. You finally get your offense to score runs, but your starting pitching poops the bed and they give up like 6 runs and we lose. Or your defense is really good, but you can't get runs across. Or your starting pitching is excellent, but your secondary offense on the base paths is terrible. Like, we can't get everything going at once, other than during that 8-game winning streak where it felt like, oh my gosh, this is what our team can do. Then it's like, I mean, it just seems like since then we haven't been able to get everything, or at least 2 or 3 of those things, because you can have one thing be a struggle, right? Like last year, we had a lot of things going for us, but our strikeout rate was super high. Now it's like, okay, well, our strikeout rate is super high, but we also can't score runs, and we also are having base path blunders, and our starting pitching is struggling here or there. It's just hard to, there's a lot going on. It's hard to nail down one specific thing. And I liked what you said earlier about you can't just look at something and say that's why this is happening. Correlation does not equal causation, especially in baseball. Baseball is such a complicated sport with so many metrics, so many moving pieces. There's the amount of factors that impact a baseball game are numerous. You could never write them all down and accurately display them. And to simplify it to like, this is why this is happening. I mean, we're at the point now where the Mariners fans are saying that the reason that the Mariners are losing is still because of the WBC situation where Cal didn't shake Randy's hand. And it's like, you know what, guys, you are grasping at straws, my friends. Like, this is baseball. And baseball has a lot of moving pieces. Let's not make it about something that happened 6 months ago.
Amen. And now I will say it does feel like they're, and I don't even love to ask this question, but it's something that we have to talk about. Is the fact that Randy Arozarena, Cal Raleigh, the whole thing happens. Randy and Cal are both guys that I look at in a vacuum. I'm like, okay, Cal, right? Super hardworking, kind of doesn't like the interviews, kind of just one word and, keep it going. And then Randy, I see kind of the same thing, but it's like, this slightly different way, so they have this problem, right? Randy says these things in Spanish that are apparently really nasty to Cal at the WBC. Then, the season starts. Randy's had this great season. Cal's had this poor season. There is something that, I won't pretend that, it's not happening, where Randy and Cal, like, you haven't seen a big kind of, celebration from them. Like, let's go, man. You just batted me. You just batted me in. You just hit a homer. We just took the lead.
Yeah.
Like, let's go. We're on the same team. We're part of the same lineup. Let alone, right? If it was me, I'm like, oh, like these two, they should be, hitting homers back to back, or, being each other on base early in the season and be doing a handshake celebration at the plate. Like, like the NFL, they did like the go for the, the chest bump.
Yeah.
And then, like, they should be doing something like that, right? They should be having so much fun with this. And the fact that that was that big of a deal, or seemingly, right, that people can even, like, see it that way, because they haven't just had some big, like, let's go, even my teammates, who I didn't like at certain points, I would, I mean, you're on a team with them,
Yeah.
right? So there is something, and again, the eye test, right? All we have is the eye test
Mhm.
beyond all these metrics, which we only can understand as much as, we can attribute them to the eye test. So
Yeah.
I won't pretend that it's not happening. I haven't talked about
For
it a lot on
sure.
this channel, but I am curious what you think. Seeing, Randy's always celebrating, Cal's always, I mean, okay, maybe not always celebrating, but they're like you just have not seen them celebrate together this year much. And it does feel like Randy is kind of a contract year guy. Cal is kind of the I'm here no matter what guy, and this might be all I have. There's kind of a weird thing going on. I just kind of want to know what you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there's something there, and I think that uh, at the end of the day, I think it's another situation of like poor clubhouse communication, of where either they've had a conversation and it's not a big deal, but we haven't been made privy to it. Not that we need to be, but when it becomes a situation of like it's obvious that there's something not right, like you probably should let your fan base know, or there is something more going on and things are not okay, which I think is probably more likely that there is just some tension or unrest between the two of them. Um, and I do think that Randy is I love individually, I love both of them. Randy is a player I have not personally met. I have met Cal personally on a handful of occasions. And so obviously that skews my bias a little bit, and I will acknowledge that. But Randy does feel like a little bit more of an emotionally volatile player. He's somebody who is going to be a little bit more intense as a personality, and we love that, right? That's what brings out, like, I mean, I remember where I was when we found out that we traded for him and how happy I was because I wanted him so badly. I wanted that intensity. And he's a great player to have on your team, but if I'm just speculating, I think that there's a good chance that there's some hurt feelings on his side that just have not quite been mitigated. And because he's likely leaving at the end of the season, it probably isn't being dealt with really concretely because they know that their time together is limited and he's going to walk at the end of the year. I wish I mean, like I said, sorry, I just smacked my mic. I have a little bit more of a like propensity towards appreciating Cal because, like I said, I've met him. I wish I had the picture I could pop up, but like we just did a baseball
Yeah,
camp with him.
yeah,
What was that?
I can pop it up right here.
Perfect. But we just did a baseball camp with a local collegiate team, and our oldest two boys participated. And do you mind if I share just this little anecdote for a second?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay, it has zero to do with baseball. Okay, yes. So my middle guy is a catcher. He's primary catcher for his baseball team, and he happened to be the first catcher in the catching, like, each of the groups. They had the kids broken up into different groups and they went to different stations. And Caden, my son, happened to be the first catcher that Cal worked with. And Cal probably spent like 15, 20 minutes with him. And then through the rest of the day, you could kind of see when Caden would move around, Cal would go and check in. And not that, I don't mean that like he was favoring him or anything. He was super involved with all the kids, but he checked in with Caden a handful of times through that camp. And you could just see that he was so enjoying pouring into a young catcher. And we know that from the way that he interacted with Luke Stevenson in spring training. That was a huge storyline in spring training, of the way that Cal was personally mentoring Luke and how he was in his ear working with him on framing all things. I'm like, it makes me want to cry, but like I got to see that with my 10-year-old, the kind of man that Cal is, and the way that he, when he was talking to these kids, the first thing he said, he's like, the first thing I'm going to tell you is that as soon as you walk out of here, the first thing you're going to go do is you're going to go thank your parents, because there's nothing else, that you are not here without them. You're not here without their hard work and their investment in you. None of this is possible without them. So that's the first thing you're going to do when you walk off this field. And every single kid did it. And, I know that Randy is heavily involved in his own community. He is a really good man. He has really great investments in the things that he cares about. And I don't know him, but on a personal level for me with Cal, I'm like, I know what this man's about. I know people in his life who are invested in him and can attribute to the kind of man that he is. And at that point, I'm like, we know enough about this guy to be like, so when this is, I mean, that post that you're sharing, I got a little salty because I was like so tired of all the nasty people. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm going to take this little kid in the red catcher's gears assessment of this guy over you because he's got the personal experience and you don't. And so, yeah, anyway, there's my little rant on that. But
that is better. I mean, in terms of helping people understand where this community is coming from than, than anything baseball related, because that's what it kind of comes down to. It's like if you do see differently, right? Like Cal is the one that is going to be here. He was the MVP last year. Now there is, even some argument to be made that, Randy's intensity has been good for the team. That Randy's intensity even this year, like the team maybe needs some more of that, right? Randy's been to a World Series. He can be the one to. Now it doesn't seem like he's the guy who's like, no, get on board. We're going. Randy's like, hey, but train is leaving, and if you're not on board, right, you might miss it. And that kind of might be the case. Obviously, going back, it's like if you could see what this whole thing would bring, I'm sure Cal would go and fist bump Randy's hand, but that's not even what we're talking about. What we're talking about is how now, has the situation made it like we don't have really the choice to just to ignore this, because Randy Rosarena is going to be gone. Unless the Mariners sign him to a massive extension. He's going to get, I don't know, $20 million a year for 5 years at least.
At least, yeah.
More than what he's going to get more than what George Kirby, probably not more than George Kirby, but like he's going to get that type of money. He's going to get tens of millions, multiple years. So, I mean, the Mariners need they need that intensity. They need it to come from the right place. They need it to go right. But it's just it really, looking back, right, looking forward at that time, it's like, okay, this isn't, this is really can't be the worst thing ever, even though, there's these nasty words and, this seemingly nasty situation. Now, I mean, you have no choice but to look back on it as the season as a whole. And I mean, we've looked at, enough analytics. We've looked at plenty of analytics, about Cal, and I mean, he's still pulling the ball in the air and doing a whole lot of good things. It is really one of the craziest changes in season to season, like MLB history. I don't know what we're going to look back on it 10 years as, depends, but this is where this team is at. So, one of the, other couple things I wanted to ask you about, or just kind of talk to you about. There's this fun little stat called Championship Leverage Index, right?
Oh, okay.
So this is 1 is like average, right? 1.0, and then like 1.5 is like this game is or 2 is like this game is twice as valuable as a regular game in terms of like your team winning the World Series. So a lot of like the early season games are not that big of a deal. But you look at basically what the most valuable games were to the Mariners this season on their route, on their quest for a World Series. This one in Texas, game 107.
I remember that game.
The Texas one. And this is where, I mean, this is only 2 weeks ago at this point, a little over 2 weeks ago, 16 days ago. I mean, you're in Texas. The division is tied. Whoever, or it's like within a half game, whoever wins this game is going to be on top of the division. And I mean, the Mariners lose, 7-3, but this game was worth, 2.12. Other than that, right, you haven't had a game be that worth it for a little while now.
Yeah.
And you're starting to see the games be less and less worth it. You basically now, 116 against Detroit, the 11-0 one. And so, by the way, this is calculated before the game for each of these games. Like, how much will this game be worth? So even that Detroit like 11-0 game, was a super valuable game going into it.
Yeah. That's really cool. I've never that's a stat I haven't heard of. That's fascinating.
I only found out about it a couple weeks ago, but I look at it and it kind of tells this, just looking at the different games and stuff, it's like, okay, um, it definitely shows you where where the opportunity was, where the
Mhm.
opportunity kind of is. Um, but yeah, I don't really. I kind of. I was gonna ask you something about it, but it's like, it's just kind of crazy, I guess.
Yeah, it is crazy, and I think, there's something valuable to a metric like that of like, okay, but at the same time, I think when we look at our season right now and where we're at, like, there's likely gonna be a lot of value in every single game we play because we just so desperately need to start stacking wins, right? Start stacking wins and series wins and build some momentum. Um, but to actually see that like on paper is fascinating, right? And to think back, like, yeah, that Monday game was on the 27th of July was that was a heartbreaker. And so to see that number alongside it, you're like, oh yeah, okay. There's a little bit of affirmation in why that felt like such a big deal.
And I guess what else makes me, kind of like look at this and be like, huh, it's that, right? When you're going into these games and they're big, what is it? Six of the top 7 games were losses. Only one of those top 7 games, Angels game on the 30th of June, you have to go
Yeah.
back to, was like that was the biggest win of the year. And other than that, like game 83, that's over a month ago now. Yeah, June 26th. Like you don't have these big later in the year type of games.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, everybody's talked about it. The big topic with the Mariners right now is, oh well, the schedule is so hard in August. Like, we're basically, if we couldn't do it last month, we definitely can't this month, right?
Yeah.
Or it's going to be a whole lot harder at least. So, game 121 today. Uh, I mean, obviously Yankees. These next 2 games, then Houston for the weekend series, then Milwaukee, Chicago Cubs, Philly. Um,
Yeah.
I guess there's not really much to say other than these teams are really good at baseball. But your thoughts on kind of the rest of the schedule? Tough August, hard September.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. Kind of the conversation that I had with somebody in the last week was, if we can kind of just hold on through August, September is pretty easy. I mean, we play what, 6 or 7 against the
Against
Athletic,
the A's, same
and then
thing
we
with
go
the
and face
Angels.
the Angels. I mean, we play a couple games against Houston. We play the Rockies. I mean, we should beat the Rockies handedly, but again, we're going to be in Colorado, so changes things up a little bit. I think, if there's here's kind of how a couple of different scenarios of what I think happen aside from the Mariners just continuing to struggle and we are mathematically eliminated before then. But I think that 2 things are really possible. One, we see this team here in the next week or so really stand on business and beat teams that are on paper better than them because we start playing to the back of our baseball card, right? Like we start playing the kind of baseball that we are absolutely talented enough to play. And like, okay, then it goes, oh, okay, we actually have a team here that is competitive. Or we go on a run in September, like we kind of hold steady. Like even if we play 500 baseball for the rest of August and then go into September and take advantage of very, poor baseball teams, ones that are really struggling, then I think either one of those scenarios could land us in contention, right? But it's really going to be back to what we said before. I think it's really just going to depend on our team having the grit and the guts to actually fight for it. And yeah, I mean, and there definitely needs to be some approach change that happens. And hopefully after, I think last night in the post game conversations and things like that, it kind of felt like the people, like the players and the management really kind of hit a breaking point of like, oh no, this is not working. And people are starting to take accountability and they're starting to be more serious about what is going wrong. So hopefully that actually changes something. Um, but yeah, I mean, August is going to be really tough, but I do think that we can take advantage in September, but I also think we can beat these teams in August too. I don't have any doubts about that on the whole. It's just more about what our team is actually doing right now.
I mean, any likelihoods mattered, right? Then Cal wouldn't have what is it, 12 homers, 13 homers, be hitting 159. We wouldn't have every single player underperforming if we had any sort of expectations. Like, yeah, the expectations are something that you kind of just have to, at this point, look at and be like, all right, it, there's no point in us, trying to be realistic or, oh,
Yeah.
let's just make sure we don't get our hopes up. Because right now, again, there's nothing that benefits you from not having your hopes up other than having them stomped on every night, which
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's the relationship that that we're in.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
there's no getting out of it. Um, I do sometimes detach, like, okay, like last night, I'm like, okay, I'm a little bit detached just from the fact that, Michael Rucker comes in and then, oh, yeah, by the way, so you see Wu, does his thing, gets absolutely hammered, but keeps all the runs off the board, and only allows 3 hits. Then Ferrer, 87.1 average EV, which he is usually like a like a bend don't fold guy when it comes to the hard contact. It's like
Yeah.
super duper hard contact that somehow
Yeah.
doesn't leave the yard. But then when Rucker comes in, he
Ooh.
is like, okay, these guys are expecting the ball in the zone constantly, right? If I'm not Brian Wu or Jose Ferrer attacking them like crazy in the zone, and I've got to go 44% in the zone, then quickly the strike rate becomes 52%, which strike rate's another funny stat because it has such a small margin for error.
Yeah.
It's 64 is average, 66 is elite, 62 is bad.
Oh, so 52 is off.
52 is like outlier, something's going wrong. And
Yeah.
when you watch this game, you see Rutgers like just breaking ball below the zone, just trying to stay away from everything. And then the bases are loaded, and it's like, well, you've got nowhere to go now. Like he like got walked backwards into this. Also with 102 average exit velocity, and he's kind of like a breaking ball package, crafty type of guy that I like.
Mhm.
That the system produced and stuff. But like 96, as his velocity, even was up on velocity last night, throwing hard.
Mhm.
It didn't matter. He's
Yeah.
got the 3 fastball approach, and then like, yeah, this curveball thing, breaking ball, which sometimes it looks like a changeup, sometimes it looks like a slider.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a funny pitch for sure.
but you see how this is like and this is what something I said on my post game last night. Like, if the Mariners don't, like, if you don't have like top 20 to 40 command in baseball, the Mariners almost don't have a recipe that you can like cook with because
Mhm.
they're all their guys are like super attack the zone, control the zone.
Yeah.
It's my zone, and I'm gonna live in it, and you're gonna have to,
Figure it out.
but then Michael Rucker's trying to be a little more crafty, and it's like not working. So yeah, have you ever I don't know, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to like where do you place your pitchers and where like how do you set them up for success, right? So I think like Michael Rucker, he's a valuable pitcher to have. Absolutely. But I don't think the place to play him is in a 1-0 game that you're leading against the Yankees. Um Especially looking, I mean, I think he and Bizardo are both kind of, and Bizardo's doing a little bit better now, but he and Bizardo are in similar situations where they in their innings like they'll get the outs but they're going to give up a couple of runs, and that's unfortunately been the case for a lot of their outings in the last couple of months. And so if you're up by a lot, or like for example, like if you need Michael Rucker or Bizardo to come in, and you need them to come in relief if somebody's got the bases, like a couple runners on base, but you have a pretty significant lead and you're just trying to get somebody to get an out, they're a really good fit for that. But to bring him in down or winning 1-0, um, with kind of what his repertoire is and where he's been at in the last while, I just don't see why that is consistently the best decision. And it wasn't just last night. I'm I made the joke, and maybe it was in bad taste, but I made the joke on Twitter last night of like, what blackmail does Michael Rucker have on Dan Wilson? Like, why is this the decision that we're making right now? When you have other pitchers available, and and then ending up having to blow using Bizzardo as well because of the way that played out. I don't know. I I think the stats and the pitching stats were super interesting, but at the same time, when you look at, there's this weird like marriage between analytics and like the eye test, right? Like what we've
Yes.
seen and like the anecdotal evidence, and like ultimately from the eye test of, an armchair expert like myself, I'm looking at these games and I'm like, Michael Rucker has not proven his ability to come in a leading by one game as a leverage arm. He has not proven that. So why are we making that choice? And the analytics might support it, but the anecdotal evidence doesn't. And I don't want to sound like I know best, but in a lot of cases the anecdotal evidence tends to show better. A good example of that is looking at the 2 times in the last while that Dom Canzone has been intentionally walked and the person immediately after them hits a massive home run. Like the analytics or the handedness or whatever said that it was better for him to be on base than be hitting. But then the person right behind, whether that was Cal Raleigh or Julio, hits a massive home run. Cal was hitting, 162 at that time or whatever, and he hit a grand slam. Julio, he's hitting better than that, but the analytics can only take you so far. That's, I guess, what I'm saying.
It's 100% true. I mean, just the feel. Now that you say this, right now, I'm starting to think about it. I'm like, Michael Rucker, right? Like his best at bats, right? Or like, okay, a strikeout below the zone, breaking ball, or like something like that. That's like something you do to the 7, 8, 9 hitters. And I think they did bring him in for the later hitters in the lineup. But then again, just too big of a spot.
Yeah.
Kind of they said they were trying to get an inning out of him, like as the bridge guy and stuff. And I do get the why a little bit, but it's also like, okay,
Yeah.
you've got a really crafty breaking ball guy. Like really crafty means, let's protect him, right? Bizzardo, like I know he's given up hard contact recently, but like he's just a guy who I'd rather have out there in those big leverage situations. Last year had just an insane strand rate, like in terms of stranding runners on base. I know he's been giving up homers recently, but that's something that's like a little more luck based. Like that's where I'm willing to say, okay, the eye test and the analytics can say, a homer does not make you bad, right? Eye test says you're bad. Analytics will say you're bad for one game. I'm with you. Like Bizzardo should be ahead of Rucker in the pecking order. Dominguez, a whole nother conversation for another day because, let's hope he can, just be some empty velocity, Bizzardo kind of deal. So with those two things, it's, I guess, these two things are one thing that you can, two things that you can look at and be like, okay, you're putting pitchers in, you don't, it kind of goes against all the logic of why you would put a leverage reliever in the first place, right? You put your best guy in with your best stats or the most dependable guy, whatever it is. And instead you're trying to play the analytics and get a little bit, cute and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we marry the analytics and the eye test, right? The one thing that Jeff Passan comes on Seattle Sports yesterday and is like, look, the Mariners are last in the MLB in batting average on balls in play.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah, so you heard that Jeff Passan, Jeff Passan mentioning that we're last on BABIP, that we're also one of the worst teams with runners in scoring position, and especially our best hitters with runners in scoring position. I think that's just overall what's made it such a hard watch this year. And I do think that stuff is going to improve, but I don't know that it's going to happen today. And that's why, honestly, I think this is just one of the worst teams to watch that we've had. Yeah.
And I think that's what makes them so hard to watch is it's, again, like we were talking with the Rockies. It's one thing if you're struggling, but there's no, like, there's offense happening and there's like exciting innings and runners are on base and everybody's hyped up. It's entirely different if it feels like your offense is stagnant and, your half inning at bat is going by so fast because you're striking out or you're popping out or in just a handful of pitches. That's what feels really defeating for well, it feels defeating for them, but it also feels defeating for us as fans too, to watch. You're watching the other team, grinding through at bats and getting runners on base and, 6, 7, 8, 9 pitch at bats. That's where it gets really hard to watch.
Absolutely. So here is that BABIP thing that Jeff Passan was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Pirates, like he said, up at 316, which is 9 points above the Rockies. Pretty crazy. Then the Mariners down 3 points above the Yankees. Yes, they're an outlier. We don't know exactly why. I mean, the quality of contact hasn't been great. The Mariners really don't hit the ball as hard as they could. But yeah, before we leave here, get to some of these chats. How you doing, Drumsticks? You love Jeff. He has a great balanced perspective. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to watch because the team is better than this. They're more capable instead of grinding, getting 2 quick outs. So I usually try to end with I have the 3 central tenets of the channel,
Mm-hmm.
but I also have I try to give some sort of thing that I want to see today. So in today's Mariners game, Emily, what would make you happy to see?
I think it goes back to, I would love to see some good quality contact. I would love to see some runners that get on base coming around to score, like having, moving through the lineup card and having players moving around the bases, and not just that feeling that we've had the last while of, you have runners on first and second, or you have the bases loaded and you're like, okay, how are we getting these last outs? We're only going to end up scoring 1 or whatever. I would love to feel some confidence, and like if there's runners on base, that the hitters that are up batting are going to score them, and just having them take their at bats really seriously and showing some fight out there to get that quality contact and get people moving through on base and scoring runs.
Awesome. Couldn't have said it better myself. To add on to that, the stat that I'm going to look for. Can we get the Yankees throwing more pitches than the Mariners? Can we just see some more pitches?
Yes.
If we can see some more pitches, we can do something with them. And yeah, at the end of the day, that's where, I'm going to go. So hopefully, we can see some, some more methodical offense tonight. And I think that begins with just seeing some more pitches.
Exactly.
So closing out here, right before I, do a little bit of closing stuff, and Drumsticks right there with you. Perfect. Yeah, make sure, Emily, by the way, do you have I know you don't have a YouTube channel. I know we've discussed like what your kind of next foray into content is, but I guess that's one thing I want to ask you. Where should the people find you? What can the people be expecting from you from Up West and the like?
Yeah, so probably the best place to follow me right now is on Twitter, which is, I have my handle wrong on there. I put my Instagram one on, but my handle for Twitter is just at Klesick. And I'm not totally sure what my next, what things look like going forward, but for the most part, that's the best place to follow me. That's where you're going to see any things that I post or create for now. And then continuing to do a little bit of stuff here and there with Up West. They're locked in hard right now with WSU football, so there's a lot of really fun stuff going on for the Cougs right now, so excited for them. But yeah, so we're just not totally sure what all that's going to look like going forward, but Twitter's probably the best place to find me.
Yeah, I know you obviously are Husky, but big fan of Up West and all the Coug stuff they do. So pulled this out also because I'm kind of looking for different, not protests, but like little things I can do to change it up, right? Superstitious things. So I'm thinking usually I wear exactly what the team wears, right? The same hat, the same jersey. I'm thinking I'm going to go away from that until I see a really good performance. And I always do like a score prediction before the game. I'm going to I always predict, what is the Mariners' path to victory, right? I think, the Mariners can win with this type of score, right? Now I'm going to predict the opponent to win today. See if the Mariners,
there you go.
Give the opponent more credit, right? Say, well, judging by everything we see, right, the Yankees are going to win 4-3, and just give the Mariners a lot of room to pleasantly surprise us, right? Because we've had so little room to be like, oh, this has exceeded our expectations. So, those are some ideas I've got. Any other ideas for things that I can do to
to break out of it?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I don't know. Tell you what. So our big thing that we did for a while when we were playing in the postseason last year was if the game started to look like it was getting out of hand, because what ended up happening during the crazy game 5, the major X ratings game 5 against the Tigers and the ALDS, the inning that they ended up finally winning, my kids have been up for hours and they were starting to like fade, but they wanted to stay up, and so I got everybody a giant bowl of vanilla ice cream, and I said we're all having like rally ice cream or whatever, and then we went on to win. And then that ended up happening for a couple of the games in the ALCS as well. So that's my recommendation to you. Get yourself some rally ice cream if the Mariners seem like they're struggling, and we'll see if we can break them out of it with a little like group good vibes there.
All right, that you heard it here. So yeah, I'll be back with you guys for a short pregame today and then a postgame. But it's been great having you on, Emily. Anything else you want to shout out? And remember, I guess the things, 3 things we always say at the end of this channel. Remember, as long as you go 1-0 every pitch, stay stoic, and give all glory to God. You can't lose.
Amen. I love that.
Amen. And yeah, anything last things you want to shout out or say before we get out of here?
No, I just really appreciate you having me on. It's fun to get to chat with another believer about baseball, and yeah, I really enjoy being here.
Amen to that. Look forward to hopefully having you on again in much more optimistic circumstances to talk about. Did you see that homer from Cal Raleigh? I mean, we haven't even talked about Randy's homer, right? That's just where things are at right now. But yeah, definitely looking forward to the future. And hopefully it's much better than where we're currently at. Appreciate you guys popping in the chat at the end. Remember to go follow Emily. I put her Twitter in the description. And I'll see you guys later. Go Ems.